Hi, everybody. Welcome to Purpose People. We are really delighted to have a special guest called Adam Brooks. I met Adam at Stroudfest. Listened to his talk. I thought, I need to get this guy on the podcast. So Adam, welcome.
Cool. Thank you for having me, mate. Yeah, we shared the stage together, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. It was fun. It was really fun. I basically got within your talk just a little bit about your story and your background and whatever, but obviously you've been on an incredible journey, by the way. And,
cool.
and you know, where you've kind of been rock bottom and then built something right up. But do you want to tell us what you do now? And then we can go back to your origin story a bit like that, man.
Yeah, cool. So I have three businesses now. So I have Sales Academy, which is a training and coaching business.
Yeah.
Grew that. So launched that in 2011, grew that to like a firm of coaches, nearly killed me, stripped it right back and stuff. And then started to regrow it again. Which is something you picked up on one of your other podcasts about where you got to kind of shrink to grow.
Yeah,
there was a lot of that in that. And Skinny Rhino, which is a digital agency, it's more project management.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
We kind of strategize a lot with clients, and then we bring the experts in. So we don't do any of the techie stuff or any of the real cool stuff. We get experts in to do that.
All right.
So we collaborate. It's a collaboration partnership business. And then True Connectors, which is a not-for-profit, which is designed. I see loads of kids coming out of school, college, and university, or just getting into work, and they don't have the confidence, the ability to express themselves, articulate. The self-esteem, the worth isn't there, and it's like we need to bridge that gap. And there's a lot of government schemes doing it, and we've just created a community, a business community, which is we lunch once a month, and we bring people around the table, we break bread together, we discuss things, and we get to find out the talent in a local area in a real relaxed way. So it's just going to grow nice and organically, but it's there to make a difference, you know?
Well, let's start there because, for me, what I like about that is I took my kids out of school, and we're doing the unconventional journey. You know, as Robert Frost says, it's the road less traveled with our kids' education, because I felt the product of what the school system was providing when we had work experience kids in, it was just very negative. You know, they're coming into an agency, they come into a creative environment, and it's like, what do you want to do? Don't know.
Yeah.
And you just see this like hopelessness. And you're like, so you're going to uni, college? Don't know, depends on what my mum says. You know, and it was just, and when you've done that like 50 times, and with the exception of maybe 2, you realize there's a proper problem. So I love what you're doing there. So what sort of ages are the kids that you're engaging with?
Well, we've got we're in that kind of infancy stage now where we're bringing all businesses together. So whether people are employed in larger businesses or they're running their own businesses and they've got sort of small to medium, we're getting the guys in, the decision makers, the people that can actually make a difference with these people. So we're building that network up. And then there's like a promise in there. It's £10 to come to a lunch, for example, to book a ticket to make sure you book your place for lunch.
Yeah.
But if you can't make it, for example, there's no refund. Your £10 gets given back into the community to invite somebody from a college to come along and stuff.
Great. Yeah.
So it's all that kind of cyclical economy, if you want to. So we've teamed. We're in the process of teaming up some colleges and some universities down in South Wales. Building the partnerships there, and just getting amongst it. I did a contract. I took on a contract with the DWP. 5 years. We put coaches into job centres across South Wales every Monday, morning sessions, afternoon sessions, 2 3-hour sessions in loads of job centres, and I was shocked. And at the same time, I don't just like to moan about stuff. If there's something that needs happening, I'm unafraid to just give it a go and see what happens with it. So we thought, well, the same with that DWP contract. That was just a knock on the door and said, right, I want to do some stuff with ex-offenders, ex-military, mums back to work. I don't care what their category is in DWP's eyes.
Yeah.
To me, they've got talent, but we need to explore it and we need to give them the ability to do it. So coming full circle with this now, True Connectors, we just want to do it in a very relaxed, organic way. It's not to be a networking community where we have 30, 40 groups across the UK and stuff. Do you know what? If it ends up that, so be it. But the connection is what's key. So the whole part of what we talk about is we don't care what you do. We care about who you are. So tell me about you. Tell me your passions. Tell me your dreams. Tell me what gets you out. Why did you study that? You know, what got you into archaeology? What did you want to do with it? And the same thing, you have kids going, oh, I don't know. It was a couple of my friends were doing it.
Yeah.
And then you read things like there's more people doing photography courses than there are jobs available. And it's like, why are we still pushing that then? You know what? So it feels broken in lots of ways.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think when we sit down and break bread and you just hear these conversations that don't stop with people that are in a very relaxed environment. There's no KPIs or targets like you get at some of these networking events. Like you got to bring subs, you got to bring referrals, you got to do all this. No, it's not that. It's sit down, break bread, converse, see where it takes you.
No, I love it. And I think for me, it's working out the broken thing of where we're asking questions to kids too late.
Yeah.
They're enrolled on a college course. And if the college course is asking for, is this really what you want to do? You should have asked that at an interview stage.
Yeah.
Rather than asking them like, at the end of the second year and say, so you really, what do you want to do in life type of thing? It's like, no, ask that question lots earlier.
Yeah.
And sometimes you then get the feedback, well, hang on a minute, is the college all about just getting bums on seats, or is it helping people fulfill purpose?
Yeah.
And for me, that's where the education system, I struggle with it, is they don't ask purposeful questions early enough.
No, and they also don't continue them. They don't drill down on them.
No.
And if you come up with a response that doesn't fit their remit, then they just close it down.
Yeah.
So I set up a military charity years ago, and we had a guy who came on I created this boot camp, which is a 2-day boot camp based on X Factor. So I had like the 4 stages, including like judges' houses and then
nice.
live.
Judges' houses, okay.
Yeah,
nice.
The live show. So judges' houses were speed interviews with local recruiters in the area. Mm-hmm. So it's like just 15 minutes, don't come again, 15 minutes, don't come again. Proper kind of military chalk and sawdust approach, but with recruiters. So tell your story differently than what you've got on your CV, because people are asking you how many people you shot in Afghan, because you've got it on your CV. Take it off. How do you tell your story better, but on paper and in person?
Yeah.
So the judges' houses was that, and then the live shows was actually with business owners locally.
Yeah.
Because the challenge we found, it wasn't that these guys aren't talented, it was that people were scared of them.
Yeah.
It was the business owners that were scared of them. I don't want somebody that's been in the army. They're going to shoot people and blow up. Come on. And it was the same with ex-offenders and stuff. It's like if you get a decent guy, a decent girl with a real purpose, you get 2 employees for the price of one, if not more.
Yeah.
And it's finding that match, right?
Yeah.
So it was that. We had this lad, and he'd done, he was Stoke way, and he'd done several tours. He'd done Iraq, he'd been in Afghan, and he left, and he was about 28.
Yeah.
So a lot of people join the military, especially the army, because they're running away from a life. That's their biggest marketing campaign. They're running away from life.
Yeah.
So they do brilliant things. They teach them. They give them life skills. Fantastic. But the desoldiering process doesn't exist. So he left and wanted to better himself. Went to Stoke College, and they turned him down because he didn't have enough life experience.
Wow.
And the system's broken when you got this guy in tears in front of you going, how can this be? You're like, because you're not academic and you won't pass their course because you've been out of school and the mindset of school for too long.
Yep.
If you were 16 straight into college, you're ready to learn, you're right to learn. More likely if you actually passing through.
It's an interesting one because with my father, so my father was in the Navy, same thing, wanted to get out, wanted to escape, whatever. And then he lost his kneecap. So he was basically on board ship. The hangar doors come back, smashed his knee, shattered his kneecap. Ouch. And in those days, it was like, right, we're just going to hoover everything out of your knee. So literally anything that exists of your knee is gone.
Yeah.
We're going to put a metal rod about this big in your leg. All right, there you go. Job done. They outlawed that operation 2 years after he was discharged, but he kind of, long story short, he couldn't carry on in the role that he was doing.
It's not really rebuilding it, is it? It's just providing a joint element to it.
Exactly. And so he then subsequently has always had to deal with coming out. He's retired now, but he was coming out of that world and that environment. He'd done fire service. He's done pretty much every job you can think of. His health started to suffer because the result of that knee was crumbling his back in terms of the way he walked and stuff. But the interesting thing for me is it was his identity. He never really fully locked into the identity of, I was in the Navy, and he never replaced that kind of camaraderie sort of stuff. Yeah. Now he's worked, he's done some really good stuff. Like he worked with ex-addicts for a long while and that sort of stuff. So he's done a lot of community work and stuff like that, which is brilliant, awesome. But the thing that he even talks about now, there's not enough out there, even like the British Legion and things like that, there's not enough out there to integrate service people back into life. And the reason why, weirdly, we're talking Rambo for some strange reason, that was the story of Rambo. He couldn't he walks into a town and no one will accept him.
Yeah.
For who he was. And I think, that's probably why, like, my dad loves that movie. It's because it was the empathy of, I know what that guy's going through. Yeah. Now, obviously, the way he dealt with it was probably not the best, but,
but it is exactly that, Darrell. It's that classic, like I said earlier, they're running away from life. And when you think about, there is a sinister element to that recruitment strategy, but it works.
Yeah.
And you get young kids who are lost, who are seeking a purpose.
Yeah.
And this is where I take my hats off to the military, is they give them that purpose. They give them that sense of belonging.
Yeah.
They give them that reason to exist. That purpose, which is massive. And that whole kind of mindset of the person next to you, their life is more important than yours. That camaraderie, there's nothing like that in Civvy Street. No. There just isn't, right? But that's where the problem lies. There's nothing like that in Civvy Street. So,
which is a broken society.
Yeah, absolutely. But the preparation for leaving is, you get X amount of money when you leave, depending on your service and your rank. You get X amount of points when you leave and all that sort of stuff. And what I found in the system was, you've got all of these guys coming out with credits where they can do qualifications in different courses. But at the end of it, you've got recruitment companies that were either placing you in security or driving jobs. And that was it. So it didn't matter what you did. And then communications engineer and BT and that sort of stuff came in. So, but pretty much no matter what they wanted to do, they were sandwiched into, but that's my only other opportunity. That's
so bang on. It's because, like, my dad did a lot of work in the financial services with mortgages and stuff like this sort of stuff, which was strange. And it was almost like, well, I can do this sort of stuff. I know how to talk to people. You know, he was a guy, his job was being on board the aircraft carriers, guiding the people like Tom Cruise in to land with the paddles. That was his job. So every time I watched the beginning of the film,
that's a ballsy job. And you've got a big plane and you've only got a short runway, right? It takes courage.
Because I thought my dad was quite risk averse, and maybe, as he's got older, he's not so risk averse. It's the 8th most dangerous job in the world, guiding planes in like that. So I was like, okay, my dad's not very risk averse. So, and his father before him was a Spitfire pilot. There's a whole story about that. But,
nice.
But the point of it is that, the fact that the army do it so well, why are the colleges, universities, employers just not learning off those institutions in terms of giving young people a purpose or helping them discover it? Because that's the frustration with me. A person that's 17, 18, 19, 20 seems to have no purpose, even though they've done a college course or done a university course. It's not uncommon for me to know that there's people that have done 2 or 3 degrees.
Yeah.
And I did that. It didn't work. So actually, why are you not asking the question, maybe you just love research?
Yeah, maybe you just love studying. You just got a good memory, because they're not teaching you the knowledge. They're teaching you to remember stuff for an exam, right? And it's like, So I've got friends with multiple degrees, and one of them, he's been a driver for years, and every single job he went for, he was just overqualified. He was a threat to every single person he went for, and he speaks multiple languages. I don't know if you remember the first round of 15 to 1, the old quiz show on Channel 4.
Yeah.
With the old guy that used to run it. It's like, if we got one question right in that, we were super brains, right? He got to the final, and he only lost because he was in a grudge match with this other guy on the knocking each other out on the lights. But incredibly.
But weirdly enough, and this quite, I'm loving the conversation. Weirdly enough, I was invited to go and watch Liverpool Football Club for a friend of a friend they asked me to take their son to watch Liverpool for the first time. He wanted to see Steven Gerrard. So I'm there with 2 teenagers driving up to Anfield in her car. She said, I'll pay for the fuel, whatever. We drive to this guy that's got us the tickets. He's a professional quizzer. They call him quizzers.
Yeah, okay.
He doesn't do anything else, just goes on game shows.
Nice.
So he won, I got a feeling he won 200,000, maybe 225 he won 225 on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
Nice.
But that's all he did. He's literally been on, and because he loves research.
Yeah.
He's turned that into his life, which for me, that was like, I didn't know this sort of stuff existed.
No, but do you remember going, because it comes back to the point about asking purposeful questions earlier. I'm 48 this year, so I remember having conversations at secondary school with the career advisor.
Yeah.
And that got replaced by, you know the lotto slips now, where you just put a mark in and you don't go outside the box to set your numbers.
Yeah.
But there was a computer software that replaced a careers advisor, and you basically filled this out, and they did a personality test to tell you what careers you should go into. And mine said a nurse, of all things.
Wow.
And I'm like, yeah, okay. And it said, or a policeman, which was funny because I wanted to be a policeman from the age of 5. So I was like, well, let's do that then.
Okay.
But it's like those conversations don't happen anywhere near the level that they used to. So I knew at kind of 5 years of age what I wanted to do, which was to become a copper.
Yeah.
And then I'm having conversations with my friends, and they don't know what they want to do. So I've never known what that feels like.
Yeah.
So when you see, I don't know, explain, like when Beethoven puts his ear and he can't even hear and he can play a piano like that. He's like, he just gets it and he doesn't get why nobody else can play the piano at the same level as him.
Yeah.
It's that kind of concept. It's like, I can't grasp not knowing what you wanted to do, not having a direction.
Yeah.
And even if the direction changes, even if, like you talk in your, one of the podcast episodes about your book, the crisis catalyst and stuff like that. You know, how many of those crises do we create ourselves?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I look through most of my screw ups and they turn into really good things.
Yeah.
Because it's whether it's an unconscious or a conscious thing at the time where I've done something that has then cost me emotionally, financially, whatever it might be. And then suddenly you're like, actually, I needed this reset.
Well, I think for me, it's a quest of identity. You see, we know that we know that we're meant to be something. And sometimes that reinvention it's not working. And as you said, sometimes it's a conscious decision that this is not working, I need to walk. Or sometimes you're just making decisions that are taking you on that path that therefore that you just change job or you might move because you're trying to find this thing. We often dress it up as like, I'm trying to find happiness, when in fact what you're looking for is trying to find your identity. And I think in finding your identity, then the happiness and the passion and all the stuff comes from that. Whereas what we're doing is going the other way around. We're going, well, I need to be happy and I need to be passionate. But what about what? You know, and you've got to go down that, essentially that self-introspection to say, is this life that I have working for me? Do I wake up, and the classic is, it's cliche, but do I wake up on Monday going, yeah, I'm really excited? Or do I wake up going, no, I want to run to the hills. I don't want to do this anymore.
I got to go to work or I get to go to work kind of thing. You know
exactly. I mean? It's like, you know, am I living to work or working to live? You know, what is the question there? So for me, I see kids almost, we were aware of it, but we're not doing anything about it. We're just going, oh, well, it was same for me. I had to figure life out. And that's not good enough.
No, it's not. And I think that going back to the point about the military, I do think that's where the military do get it right. There's always that accountability and leadership around you and above you, and then it becomes part of you and ingrained in you. When I was at secondary school, there was one of my teachers, and I dislike secondary school. You know, I had a chair with my name on outside the headmaster's office kind of thing, you know. And to be fair, the best thing about headmaster's detention was you got an hour and a half in the library rather than half an hour just for a normal detention. So go for the biggie. And I'd read National Geographic magazines. I was fascinated. I learned so much reading National Geographic magazines. The journalism in those were incredible. And I grew up in Newnham-on-Severn, a tiny little village, and I'm reading stories about animals and creatures and cultures and stuff like that from all over being reported beautifully in pictures. My eyes are wide open. I'm like, I want to go see the world. I want to experience it. I want to do stuff. And that was headmaster's detention for me.
You're actually having to learn that as a punishment.
Punishment, yeah.
And that's the only way you can do it.
Well, I learned more from those magazines I did for 15 years of teachers. Do you know what I mean? But and I'm not gonna go hard on teachers, but Mr. Hatton was my favourite. And I remember the first day he took me for English, and he looks like remember the old black and white war films, the Second World War films, the SS officers. So Mr. Hatton, bald head, round glasses.
Oh, okay.
Tall, slim. He just looked like an SS officer, right? Very calm, just a beautiful, beautiful man. Really, really. But you knew there was a side of him. It was just there. You know when you can sense it or something? You go, I don't want to push this guy. And he said in the first lesson, he said, so something I need to let you guys know is I will never fail you. No matter what you do, and even when you've failed yourself and you've given up on yourself, I will never fail you.
Wow.
And he said, and believe me, I could list off a load of names, and I won't say it for the benefit of the tape. He said, but they failed themselves, and you'll know of these kids, and I never failed them. And he listed off his name, and I knew 3 of them. And I'm like, fair play, if he can deal with them. And so there was just a level of respect that was there right from the start. But I'll never forget. He said, and he whispered it, and he was like, "But make a fool out of me, and I will make you yourself with fright."
Wow!
And it was just one of those. Can he say that? Is he allowed to say that?
Yeah.
But our secondary school was ex-grammar school and stuff. A lot of the teachers were ex-grammar school teachers. It was a different kind of way back then. But instantly I knew where I stood with him. So there was just a level of respect, and there was a level of, I know I can have some fun with this guy. I know we can, he's going to teach me, I'm going to learn a lot from him, but also I know not to mess.
Which is mad, because that's for me where I found leaders more in sports. So I was in sports. I played football and that sort of stuff there. And I had more rapport with the manager than I did my teacher. And why was that? The manager was because they were interested in you would talk about the game, obviously, but he was asking you about your life. What are you going to do? You going to college? You behaving yourself? And you've got
interested.
Interested. Where I think the teachers, for me, and my wife is a teacher, or come from teaching, was that the teachers aren't teaching; they're doing statistics all the time. So they're literally bogged down in admin, and the very thing that they've
had their joy stolen from them.
The very thing that they love in this particular system, they can't actually do.
Yeah.
And funny enough, one of my business partners that's in humans, his thing is that he wanted to be a teacher, became a teacher, and then was told that this kid needs to be expelled because if we keep him and we give him a second chance or whatever, he's going to affect the results of the entire school.
Yeah. Drag down the percentages.
So he quit. Now, goes back to purpose. He knew he needed to educate. He loved teaching. But guess what? He's found the vehicle to be able to do that through coaching and mentoring and that sort of stuff. So I'm saying that sometimes you know what your purpose is, but the vehicle that you need to express it might be wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that for me...
Well, that was a tipping point for me with the growing up wanting to join the police. Growing up in a little village which was traffic for the Forest of Dean, so you saw police everywhere. You got a clip around the ear if you were caught scrumping and stuff like that. There was always those little things. But I just loved it. And I remember my first application, I think I put on there, I wanted to investigate all areas of the police, including the police. It's not good on your application. I put dog handler next time. It was and pass through the paper sift. But as life goes, I failed the application for Gloucester, and I had to. I think it had been 10-month process.
Yeah. And
I got through to the final stages, final interview, and I was told I was too shy. And I'm like, listen, you can challenge my academia, but shyness isn't something that I'm bothered with at all. And he's like, all right, fair enough. So I left there disappointed, and I went and knocked on Reliance Security. They were doing some custody contracts and all that sort of stuff, and the electronic tagging contract was about to start. So I thought, let's go down there. Let's get experience working with offenders, because then I'll be so attractive they can't turn me down next time. That was my idea, right? And then in that space of probably 12 months, I'd 3 months in, I knocked on the trainer's door and said, look, the trainer's a bit broken. We're doing handcuff compliance in the classroom and stuff. This doesn't work. The first guy I handcuffed didn't pay his poll tax, and we got him out of bed at 3 o'clock in the morning. He'd been in police station, so he didn't like anyone. And I couldn't even get the double lock on the handcuff, and he was dragging me across like desperate down. In the police station. Police didn't want to know because we took their overtime off, and so it was all political at the time.
Yeah.
So, and I just remembered that I'm not the biggest guy, so there has to be a better way.
Yeah.
So let's talk to him. Let's engage with them. How would I want to be treated? Right, let's do that. If I was in this situation, how would I want it to be treated? And let's do that. And then, years later, I found myself in that situation. I made a mistake, and I found myself sat in a cell in Nottingham, and the guys from Securical came in, and they were doing the job that I was doing a couple of years ago.
Wow.
And that's when everything falls out of your belly,
Yeah.
Those kind of moments.
So for me, it's that thing of, how do you go from wanting to be a policeman, working in security, to ended up being an entrepreneur running 3 businesses? How do you go from there to there? What is it? Is it about making a great impact, giving people a second chance?
Look, at my age now, looking back, it started at 5. Mm-hmm. I didn't know the stepping stones, but I've always been a coach. It's kind of in me.
Yeah,
it's not like a certification or a qualification. I don't need, and I ego aside, I don't need anyone's certification that I'm a coach. I've been asking questions and listening and caring enough about human beings to help them get out of their own way since I was a kid.
Yeah.
And my friends and all that sort of stuff. And probably my mum and dad will tell you how much always pulling on a dress, asking why, and kind of questioning and drilling down and not taking a simple answer as an answer and stuff. I'm always that curious little 5-year-old. And I've carried that throughout life. So when I got into the custody and the rehabilitation stuff, what I found was, chasing them down, locking them away, that wasn't what I wanted. What I wanted to do was, when I saw the lights go on in someone's eyes and they changed direction from a conversation we had.
Yeah.
There was a guy in Bristol Madge who will remain nameless, but Bristol Magistrates, and it used to rain inside. It wasn't a nice place to work, let alone be a naughty person in, right? And you'd be in 14 people's cells and all that sort of stuff. And this guy was just always kicking off. And he was a big guy. And talking to me at the time, he looked like an 8-foot monster, he was just huge. And he was always fighting because that's what he got a buzz from,
Yeah.
But he was fighting the system. So every person that he ended up fighting with was just part of the system that he was battling.
Yeah.
And I just remembered I was in the courts that one day, and I wasn't stationed in those courts permanently, but I was in there, and he was buzz on the buzzer and stuff, and everyone's fed up with him. They get him all the time. He's in regularly and stuff. And I was like, I'll go and see him, and I went out to chat and stuff, and probably could have got sacked for what I did, but I was just talking to him through the cells and through the perspex, and I was like, what's the matter? And he's like, oh, I want to see my solicitor. I want a cup of tea. One of these. A lot more expletives in that. And I said, okay. I said, look, when the solicitor gets here, I'll give him a shout. I said, I'll put the kettle on in a minute, make you brew. I don't bmoke, but I can get you some baccy and stuff like that. I'm sure we can blag you a fag. Other than that, what's the matter? And he's like, I'm bored.
Wow.
And I was like, well, why didn't you say? I said, I'm sat up there and I'm bored as well. We're waiting to take you guys up and down to court and stuff. I said, you should see how mundane this job is. I said, I'd rather be sat here talking to you and stuff. I said, but I don't want to do it through the perspex. I said, do me a favor. And he's like, what? I said, sit on your bunk. And he said, why? I said, if you sit on your bunk, I'll stay and have a conversation with you because I got time to kill. So he went and sat down on the bunk, and I opened the cell door and just leant against the cell door. Now, I had the keys to everything, so it would have been key compromise and all that sort of stuff. It was probably daft looking back, but he sat down and we were chatting away, laughing and joking. He was taking, so I was taking, we had a good. And I said, look, I got to crack on. I got some work to do. And then as I went to leave and shut the door, he's just said, Gov, can I ask you a favour? And I was like, yes, mate, yeah. He was like, can I come up to court with you? And I was like, okay, on one condition. I don't have to handcuff you until we get there.
Wow.
And he's like, what do you mean? I said, well, you got section after section. I said, but I don't want to have to handcuff you because this place is safe enough. We don't need that, do we?
Wow.
And he was like, no, we're good. And he was absolutely good as gold, you know? And it's that, it doesn't matter the size of the person. All that. So it was just that inside of you, there's a good person. There always is.
Yeah,
and I'm not a religious person, but I'm a very strong faith. I believe in people. I believe in the good.
Yeah.
The good in people. And I want to discover that.
Yeah.
So, and I've always wanted to discover that. And just to poke around a little bit, and sometimes with a big stick, poke around and you see the lights go on.
Yeah.
And at that point you can step back and go, see where that takes you now.
Yeah.
That's passion for me. That's enjoyment. That's better than a paycheck. That stuff is gold.
Yeah. And I think, and that for me is often what you'll find within the kids in school, that they're going through tough times, or they're in backgrounds that you just, your hair would curl if they hadn't.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's like, what point do we actually ask deeper questions of them and what they want out of life and whatever, irrespective of their situation and circumstance? I mean, I remember being at school and we had a guy who was an unbelievable football player, like crazy good.
Yeah.
And he basically sabotaged his own career because of his home life and the background he was from. And, when things didn't go his way, he would just sit down on the floor and sulk.
Yeah.
This is a guy that was unbelievable player. I remember we heard the story that he was, I think it might be for QPR or Southampton, mid-trial, battering everybody. Someone didn't pass him the ball, so he just sat on the pitch.
Man.
This is in the trial, and
it's not going my way, so I'm going to sulk.
But that was his natural reaction. Rather than someone put their arm around them and say, look, you need to turn that as an energy and be able to channel it and whatever, and be essentially probably the most talented player they'll know didn't make it.
Yeah.
That's
that for me, that's the biggest crime.
There you go.
Right? Wasted talent. And it's 100%. Like, I think there was a Robert De Niro film, Bronx Tale, which I think is the first film he ever directed.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's a beautiful story. If you've never seen it, it's a beautiful, beautiful story. And he says in there, his biggest crime is wasted talent. And I'm like, that's it. As soon as he said it, I was like, that's a big driver behind me. There was injustice. There's all those kind of things of life isn't fair and all that sort of stuff. And it used to bother me. And I grew up with an abundant mindset, but didn't know it then.
Yeah. Okay.
But I grew up in a scarcity mindset family, a scarcity mindset environment and all that sort of stuff. And I never really understood why, but I just fought against it. Yeah. And as I became an adult, still time. As you grow up, you start to find, I found owning it, I found better strength in my own values, my own conviction, my own choices, and my own ability.
Yeah.
And those kind of things combined became pretty powerful.
Yeah, definitely.
In a good way, you know what I mean? It's like this, no matter, and my nan used to say to me all the time, my nan used to be a West End singer. She was like the warm-up guy for Norman Wisdom on a Saturday night in the West End, right?
Wow.
And he'd come on for 20 minutes. They'd be on all night, like doing the prop, doing it. And she always said to me, when you find your stage, your life will never look the same again. But I always thought growing up that was the West End. It's not. It's being in front of one person or 4,000 people and seeing a few lights go on, and they just knowing in your heart they're going to leave that room today thinking and acting differently. And that's all I want. I just want to turn a light on or poke somebody somewhere or question something or just sit and hold space for them. So when they leave that space, they can think and act differently. They have permission, right? We always need permission.
We need someone to believe in you, you know, and I think that's the thing is it's so much about us believing ourselves, but it's also someone else who sees that and believes in you and said, yeah, you can do it.
Yeah, and just opens that door slightly for you, right?
Exactly, and I recognise that in sport. There are sports teams that I wasn't as successful in and I struggle with because the inherent thing was I didn't believe I was good enough in that certain position, maybe nor did the manager. So I'd end up playing there and, you know, being okay. But the manager that says, you play that position, I know you can do it, blah, blah, blah. I run through walls for them.
Yeah.
And so I look at my, you know, limited amateur football career, so to speak, and I can see the peaks and the trough. The best, I mean, I played a whole year angry one year, and it was the best season I ever had.
Yeah.
But the guy that knew that
channeling that anger into
something. So he knew I'd gone through some stuff off the pitch, and he said, right, if I can work with you, this is the best way to channel it. Just take your aggression in the way, not killing everyone, but take your aggression on the pitch and just leave that pitch with everything on the field.
Yeah.
And he gave me permission to start be that person and play that thing. And yeah, I had the best season. And I did. I joked. I literally played angry the whole year.
Yeah.
But it actually worked a lot of that out.
Yeah.
And by the end of that season, I was a different person.
Yeah.
And weirdly enough,
it shapes you. That stuff shapes you, doesn't it?
Yeah. And weirdly enough, it was the year after that where I met my wife Claire, because I was in a better place. So I left.
Funny how that happens, isn't it?
Yeah. You left all that stuff in, so you're less angry, and now you're like more contented with life. And yeah, I had a good season afterwards. I think we won the league that year, the following year.
Yeah.
But the better season for me was the year before because I felt like I had to fight for something. So it's amazing.
Yeah.
That we all have this responsibility to discover our talent, discover our skills,
do something with it,
and do something with it, because there's an audience out there waiting for you to help them. And, you know, and that's why hearing your story and where you've come from, I know there's lots to your box and your journey.
Yeah.
But inherently, there's that thing of wasted talent. I don't want people to waste their time and their talent and ideally their treasure on this planet.
Yeah.
By not doing what they're called to do.
Yeah, if you find your gift. I think people, in my experience, people are afraid of their gift. They either haven't found it yet or they have and they're terrified of it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, they're in two camps for me. They either haven't discovered it yet or they have, and it's kind of shining a big light on it.
Classic one.
And the third one, they're off living their gift, you know?
Yeah, but the classic one is, you know, and my daughter will always want to kill me with this one, but it's like having that singing voice, but much rather sing in the shower than sing to people.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a case of that story is I was acting on stage at school and someone's made a joke about me and I'm not using it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, if you look back, there's all these situations and circumstances that rather than seeing, honing that craft or that opportunity for someone to be successful, it's the very thing that has punished them and held them back and they never got over it. And no one's ever said, yeah, but what did they amount to?
Yeah.
It's like my teacher, English teacher, a name. No, I'm not going to give her a name away.
Yeah.
But the point of it is that it was, I had an amazing English teacher that can you remember the adventure books where you'd like
roll the dice and it changes?
Turn to page 16 and whatever.
Citadel of Chaos and stuff.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Fire Top Man, all like a Fire Top Man, all that crazy stuff. Yeah. And I literally, the English teacher was so passionate about English, I wrote one.
Why?
It wasn't in the curriculum, but I wrote one.
Yeah.
And it took hours.
Yeah.
But I wrote it. And
but the thought process to know where the chain's going and how, yeah.
So I wrote this whole thing and I gave it to him and he was like, and he was leaving. And he was like, oh, thanks so much or whatever. And he was like, you know, keep going or whatever else. Then I went into the next year and the teacher she actually said to my dad at an evening, I hate guys. And it was like,
wow.
Oh my gosh. And this English ability that I thought I had or whatever, I just So the actual structures of grammar and all that, so I just didn't learn it because it's like this is just torture every 45 minutes.
But if you spend time in sports, you must see it now, and I do. I'm, you know, for my morbid curiosity, I'm a Derby County fan, but you know, and I've been since I was 16. But it amazes me how different players and different teams play differently under different coaches, different managers. Yeah, and we see it all the time. Even at the highest, these players they refuse, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, they just refuse to play for him.
Exactly. And so for me, it was like, So a friend of mine teased it out of me and said, "You need to write a book." And immediately I'm back in that classroom going,
"No,
can't do it.
Yeah,
no, I'm not doing it." But it was only now I've got through that I remember that actually I wrote this technical page book, which I'd completely forgotten about, but I did it. So it was like, can I be better as an English writer? I'm sure I can. Yeah. Absolutely. It's really helpful that my wife is really good at that. So she's a really good editor. I think it might take me 2 months to write the book and Claire 6 months to actually edit the thing. But we got there, and but the point of it is that there are skills, gifts and talents. And I think for me, I was pursuing this route as an art director, and that's all I thought I was.
Okay.
But actually, there's a lot more to you than you think.
Yeah.
And that's a belief thing.
Yeah.
So look, I run a business. I'm quite creative. I can write books or whatever. But it's often those blockers where someone says something bad and no one's teased it out of us. Says, "No, I believe in you." And it can be just as simple as that to the footballer. I believe you can score 20 goals a season.
Yeah, and that's enough to give you.
And that's enough for them to go and score 25.
The other thing my nan always said growing up, and she was a big role model in my life growing up, and she was used to say, "It doesn't matter, Ad, because whatever you do, you come out smelling the roses."
Yeah, yeah.
Now, I don't remember doing that. I don't remember being that person.
Yeah.
But I remember feeling her saying it, and I throughout my life regularly hear her saying it to me.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, cool. Why am I worrying about this stuff? Why am I allowing this fear of potential power? And it happens so short now, but there was a period of my time in my life where I would doubt that. And every time I doubted it, every time I didn't listen to my gut, every time I didn't follow my instincts, that's when it hurts. It always comes back and bites.
Yeah, yeah. So would you say now, where you find yourself doing these multiple businesses now, do you feel more fulfilled now than you ever have?
Yeah. And to get brutally honest with you, some of my life choices, some of my personal choices, as I said to you earlier, I go at everything with good intent, but it doesn't mean that I don't make mistakes along the way.
Yeah, yeah.
And in those mistakes, I get hurt, people get hurt, businesses fail, things like that. It costs money. So I'm divorced, getting married again this year. So I think the actual term is I'm affianced, which is a word I never knew existed.
Okay,
right?
affianced. Okay.
Yeah. So we're getting married again in July, and we've got a family of 4 plus a spaniel, a crazy spaniel. I've got 2 of my own. Becca's got 2 of hers. Yeah. And the families, gelling 2 families together is tricky.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Because they're all teenagers and pre-nagers, but gelling any families together are tricky. We come from different cultures, different values, but there's much alignment going on with who we are and what we're about. But you can never ensure that the kids are going to be that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's always that balance of who's getting the right number of attention and time with them and all that sort of stuff. So it's a juggle, but yeah, I never believed I would be this happy in my private life because my private life has never been a focus for me until the last few years.
Wow.
Because I've been a grafter, I've been a worker, and it's like just work hard, keep going, work hard, keep going. And that's always been, so reading Dan's book, a friend of ours, Dan Stanley's book and stuff, and there's so much of that blueprint, that old masculine blueprint, which is the provider and all that nonsense. So you kind of grow up in that identity and trying to find a way out of it, not knowing what the other blueprints could look like.
Yeah.
So I just worked hard. So I was successful in my corporate career, successful in my work, and always have been, always stick my head up, never afraid of taking risks. But I never put the same effort into my private life. So relationships suffered. And I sat down with a friend of mine. So I did Tony Robbins years ago when he still had a voice. I did Chris Howard and stuff like that. And Chris Howard, funnily enough, I did Tony once. I went to UPW to focus on anger, to rechannel my anger.
Yeah.
And it didn't work for me. And I spent a weekend with Chris Howard. Absolutely blew me away. Sent me on a different trajectory altogether. And helped me reutilize all that energy in a way that I'd never found powerful before. Able to before. So, I went through these kind of different stages of success, but feeling alone in a marriage was the absolute rock bottom for me. Sitting on a sofa with somebody that you're meant to be with for the rest of your life, that you've chosen to be with, and you feel that you have become so far apart.
Yeah.
How did we ever get there?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of ownership in that for me and ownership in that for her. But collectively, we've got here.
Yeah.
But one of us has to make a decision that we either change this, we either fix it, or we just break apart. And we tried fixing it, and then I made the decision, I'm done. And I think that switch in me happened when I was 14.
Okay.
So I had a switch. And it feels like a pop in my head. It's just like, when you do the kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that pop, it goes, no more, can't do it anymore. And at that point, I know I have to change direction. So, and as soon as I make that choice, funny enough, things start to align. It starts to support you in making that decision. And that's where, at 14, I was seeing a psychiatrist because I was wet in the bed, like swamping, swimming downstairs for breakfast, kind of bedwetting.
Wow.
And I had like all these toys attached to the electrics, which were all like, I was like NASA's baby for bedwetting, you know.
Oh my gosh.
And they all alarmed, and as soon as they get any moisture, the alarm goes off. But I was in my comfy place, so I didn't like school. I was bullied by my headmaster at primary school and my form teacher at secondary school. So I really didn't like it. So my safe place was sleep.
Wow.
Because I didn't really know how to talk to people about it or what to say about it. Because normally it's just like, oh yeah, you get that at school. So no one really took it seriously.
Yeah.
So I just went inward, But again, knowing that now, I didn't know that. This is years of self-development to get to this realization and the awareness of seeing things for actually what they were, not for what I thought they were or what I hoped they would be.
Yeah.
And I'm talking family, friends, parents, all that sort of stuff. So I'm sitting there with this psychiatrist and they're asking questions about this bedwetting, and suddenly all of this stuff came out, and I stood up to my form tutor because I was sat in a maths class and he came in and he was giving it large to all these kids that were messing about. And I'm sitting there doing some maths, but I was drawing. I was doing a part of maths which I liked, which was drawing graphs and stuff.
Yeah.
So my tongue was up my cheek and I'm like all concentrating away as boys do. And as soon as he'd rollicked everyone, he turned to me and there was nothing to give me anything for, apart from I wasn't in the seat that he allocated me. Because I didn't want to sit by this kid, Clarky, because he was a little. And he just ripped into me because I was in the wrong seat.
Wow.
And I remember looking at him and I had nothing in the tank. And I thought, I'm not doing this anymore. So I just started to pack up my stuff quietly. And he's like, where do you think you're going? And I said, I'm done. I'm leaving. And he said, if you leave this class, you'll never be allowed. And I said, can I just check? Is that just for maths or is that IT and tutor as well? Because I need to know.
Yeah.
And he was getting more and more furious. And as I saw him getting more and more furious, I was just getting calmer and calmer. And I ducked under his arm and I just left the class. And at that moment, I felt that pop. And I remember feeling and thinking, no one is ever going to make me feel like this again. I stopped wearing the bed overnight, which was like huge breakthrough for me.
Yeah.
I couldn't go camping with my mates and all that sort of stuff. Couldn't do the things boys do because we'd all...
It's embarrassing.
Yeah. They'd be soaking in the tent and they'd be like, it hasn't been raining, Ad. Oh, I don't know. So yeah. And you stay over at your cousin's house and they put bed sheets and you like, my aunts used to put a bin liner under the sheet and stuff.
Okay.
So you wouldn't sleep all night. You just rustle for the whole night.
Keep everyone awake.
Yeah.
Keep shifting around.
Yeah. So these alarms and all that sort of stuff were all part of it and stuff. And then so the breakthrough happened and I felt it. And then at 20, when I had another one, I felt that I realized self-realization that actually it wasn't about other people making me feel that way. I would never allow myself to feel that way again. Which is
interesting because you've made a decision. Yeah, you've made a decision that outside influences, outside circumstances are not going to be the thing that makes your decision. And and as you said, you've admitted that there are things that you could have done better, and it's turning those losses into learns. How grammatically correct that is, I don't know, but
we'll have it.
We'll have it. But it is literally going, well, okay, this may not have gone as well as I thought it would do, but how can I turn this life around to be something of note and something of worthy? And just even in those sound bites, there is that essence of that same passion or same drive. You seem to have that for other people.
Yeah.
That you almost rooting for them.
Yeah,
you're almost saying, I've been in this place.
Yeah.
You can too. I can help you get the breakthrough to get you onto where you need to get to.
The best energy and fuel comes from that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But you can tell because you did it in you, and it's like going, well, it works. I've changed my life. It's got better. Let me help you get there because I know what's on the other side is better than where you find yourself right now. But you need someone to believe in you, and I'm willing to do that for you.
Yeah, it's like that. I'm reading Carrie Ad Lloyd's book at the moment, You Are Not Alone, which is all about grief, her grief journey. And Carrie Ad Lloyd, the comedian stuff, and she runs a brilliant podcast, Griefcast. And I'm reading this book, and you talked about it in previous podcasts. I've talked about it loads of mine and different things about like processes through grief and loss, and like redundancy. When you get made redundant from a corporate job, there's a grieving process you go through.
Yeah,
it's not trained like that. You're not supported in that way. It's like, it's only grief if your dad dies. But when my dad died, I felt exactly the same, completely lost. Am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong and stuff? So the biggest emotion I've struggled with all of my life is guilt. So jealousy, envy, and all that sort of stuff. I worked through all that stuff, realized total waste of emotions, waste of time, don't even go there. Feel it, notice it, aware of it, right, change direction, cool. And that's like an internal click, click, done.
Yeah.
But guilt, that was like gin for me. That was a creeper. I didn't even know it was coming,
Yeah.
And it comes all of the time at different stages. So going down to 3 days a week now and kind of retiring early, if you like, in that sense of people saying, oh, you're slowing down. No, not at all. But I'm just doing it differently.
Yeah,
I'm just structuring it differently. So Mondays and Fridays are mine and my partner's, and the kids are at school, and we've got time to do our things. Which is huge.
Yeah, but the point is, you've obviously seen the pattern of where it took you before.
Yeah.
And you're saying, I'm gonna make those adjustments. That it goes back to, seems to be a thing that I'm never gonna let this happen again.
Yeah.
So because of, I know that, I'm gonna do the work that's necessary for it. So from an outsider looking in, it's like, well, we all work 5 days a week. Well, actually,
yeah.
Who told you that?
Yeah. Why?
Why do we do? And that was the journey that we.
But I think that I was talking with Angie Hayes, she's a solution focused hypnotherapist as well as other things. Lovely lass. We were talking about it the other day, and it was about acceptance and stuff. And I said awareness is part of it, and acceptance is part of it. Yeah, but for me, before we can get to acceptance, which is that tipping point for changing direction or giving it gusto in another space, is, as I said earlier, seeing things for what they really are. Now, that might be my own behaviors. That might be behaviors of loved ones, family, friends and stuff. And you owning it, I feel, because I've got such a belief in people's abilities, that's my Achilles heel at times.
Yeah.
Sometimes I believe in them too much.
Yeah.
And it can hurt. Mm-hmm. And especially when you see that they're not living up to their potential. It's not me to say what their potential is, but you just know instinctively that they're playing small and they've got so much they can offer.
But you'll find that you'll help more people than you will get disappointed.
Yeah.
So to speak,
100%. But that's seeing things for what they are. So whether it's your own behaviors, whether it's somebody else's, what you're saying, the outcomes, the results, we almost want to. I've wanted to project a lovely film of happiness over the top of something when it hasn't been what it was. But I wanted it to be that. Yeah, and I wanted it so much that I could almost trick myself that it was.
Okay.
My marriage was like that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, so when you put that kind of thought process into everyday things, firstly, see it for what it is. Not for what you want it to be, not for what you hope it to be, not for the lovely veneer. See it for what it is. That's the start of acceptance for me.
Yeah.
So when in 2019, so my dad died April 2018, and in March 2019, I think it was, may have been later, I thought I was dead. I literally couldn't get out of bed the one day, and I couldn't sit up, and I've always been quite active and stuff, and I physically couldn't move, and I didn't know what, and they put me through loads of tests because I had effectively like a cardiovascular disease before COVID was even a thing, right?
Wow, okay.
But it was, so they were doing all these jungle tests on you and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. But it had affected my B12 and stuff, and it affected all the bloods and blah. And I just didn't have enough oxygen in my blood, and I couldn't get up a flight of stairs without stopping halfway.
Wow.
And I didn't know what was happening. And then one day I tried to sit up, and I thought this had gone.
Wow.
And I was on my own in bed. And you know when you have that moment of, everything I do and everything I've done for everyone, where is everyone? And that proper ego selfish kind of like, what about me moment?
Yeah.
And that was again another one, pop. No, I need to change some stuff. And you dip into that victim mentality for a little while, and then I bounce back out of it pretty quick. But I think we all go there. I think it's human nature to go into that victim state. And I think, but it's a choice for how long we stay there.
Yeah, and for me, that's why, not plugging my book, but that's why I wrote the book, The Crisis Catalyst, because I realised there was a pattern.
Yeah.
And there's this pattern, and there's that crisis that comes, and it's admitting first there's the crisis.
Yeah.
And there's admitting that, oh my gosh, we're in it. And then there's that shock element.
Yeah.
And the shock is the realization. It's like, I am actually here in this situation, like you're saying, I need to change.
Yeah.
And then there's the case of you have to stretch. So you've got the life you once lived or the life that you want to go after. Yeah. So now you're like going, but the life that you want to go after, there's going to be pain.
Yep.
And that for me is the big one, is that many people stay in that place of stretch, that indecision mode, and never get out of it. They constantly, shall I, shan't I, shall I?
Yeah.
The guy...
Shoulda, woulda, couldas. Shoulda, woulda, couldas, right?
But the thing is, the guy that I was talking to you before we even started the podcast about that work situation was that was his whole framework, but he needed, if he wanted to change his life or do something, he would have to stretch out of it. And I believe that he'd stay there for the next 40 years.
Yeah.
Because he might not realize this is the fulfillment that he wanted, but he couldn't take the risk of what it would change because he didn't know what it would look like on the other side.
Yeah.
So he'd stick at it. So a lot of people do that in, we talk about the civil service, governmental jobs is where they're still doing their job. They know they've got to go and reinvent, but they stay because of the pension.
Yeah, 100%.
And I was talking to a police guy, he was high up in the police, and he wanted to change his life.
Yeah.
And he said, I went and said, I'm going to quit because I cannot do this anymore. So he had that pop moment.
Yeah.
Cannot do this anymore. And everyone around him said, yeah, but what about the pension?
Yeah.
And he said, I can't do this for the next 15 years.
Just for that.
He said,
that's what they get you. They know they get you like that,
Yeah.
The hook's there. The pay's not good, but your pension's amazing. It's like, there's no other final say. If you leave here, and that's coercive power.
Yeah.
That's not nice.
No, it's not nice. So it goes back to that thing of, in the beginning, we're talking about people finding out who they are, and then making sure, like with coaching and stuff like that, we keep people account to actually step forward to that on a regular basis. Let's say, don't give up, don't get stuck. How do you express that on a much bigger and wider way of doing things?
Yeah,
Adam, I know we've been here for ages. I could talk for another 2 hours with you. It's been really, really cool, and we definitely have you back. Is there an easy way for someone to get in touch with you? We're not touched too much about what you do or whatever, but do you want to just give yourself a plug?
Yeah, well,
Go for it.
Fab. It's been brilliant. And same, I could talk with you for hours, and would love to come back. And I need to get a copy of your book. I want to read it next.
Yeah, we're going to find a copy for you after here.
Fantastic. No, avid reader. So UK Sales Academy is a great way to find it. And interestingly, you talked about those adventure books.
Yeah.
And I know with creation and all that sort of stuff that when I sat down with our web designer to build Sales Academy, I explained those adventure books. And I was like, so the sales process on our website needs to follow that. And they were like, no, Google doesn't like that. I said, let me worry about Google. Our social will take people to our website. Yeah. What I want is you to build a website that they have to choose their journey through our website.
Wow. Okay.
Which is what they do. And as soon as they start choosing, they don't even notice the rest of the website's opened up. But at first, it's locked. You can't even see anything else until you choose.
Yes, yeah. No, I had a look.
It's designed in that because it was exactly that. I wanted to roll the dice and choose my next step. So, and it's not perfect, and it's designed to not be perfect.
Yeah.
But it works and it converts, which is what I wanted. I spent thousands of pounds on websites that just sit there like a pamphlet in the sky.
That's right. Yeah.
So I'm not an email kind of guy. My phone number is my LinkedIn profile. It's the easiest way to get hold of me is just to pick up the phone or WhatsApp and make it instant.
Adam, thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Awesome.
It's been a pleasure.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning into the Purpose People podcast. Just to remind you can like and subscribe to us on YouTube and on Apple, Spotify, and Google podcast platforms. You can review us and you can follow us. That really helps us get our message out there that life is better lived on purpose. We trust that you're enjoying the Purpose People podcast, but if you'd like to find out more about putting purpose at the heart of your business, you can contact us today, book a discovery call, and we can discuss how we can help you live a life on purpose.